Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode, 1953 MKUltra, Dr. Frank Olson. The ultimate casualty of MKUltra's darkest experiment. While Dr. Frank Olson was not the very first human being subjected to the CIA's clandestine drug trials, his tragic death stands as the most infamous, meticulously covered up, inhumanly devastating casualty of Project MKUltra's early operational testing phase. His story lays bare the chilling reality of what happened when the intelligence apparatus turned its chemical weapons inward, treating its own scientists as disposable laboratory rats. To understand the tragedy of Dr. Frank Olson, it is essential to look at who he was before he crossed paths with Dr. Sidney Gottlieb and the CIA's Chemical Warfare Division. A brilliant, dedicated family man and a top-tier civilian scientist operating at the bleeding edge of biological defense. Born in 1910 in Hurley, Wisconsin, Frank Olson grew up with a sharp, analytical mind that naturally gravitated toward the hard sciences. He pursued higher education in chemistry and bacteriology, ultimately earning his Ph.D. in biochemistry. Olson possessed a rare combination of rigorous academic intellect and practical problem-solving skills, making him an invaluable asset to the United States scientific community as the clouds of World War II gathered. The work at Fort Detrick and the Special Operations Division. Following the outbreak of World War II and the intensification of the Cold War, the U.S. military ramped up its secret research into chemical and biological warfare, fearing that foreign adversaries were developing similar capabilities. Olson became a key civilian scientist and bacteriologist working for the Army Chemical Corps at Camp Detrick, later Fort Detrick, in Frederick, Maryland. Specifically, he was assigned to the Special Operations Division, SOD. At Fort Detrick, Olson was not a fringe researcher. He was a leading authority on aerosol dissemination, biological agents, and anthrax weaponization. His work was considered vital to national security, and due to the extreme sensitivity of his research, he held a high-level security clearance. Because the CIA's Technical Services Staff, TSS, under Sidney Gottlieb frequently collaborated with military researchers to test chemical delivery systems, poisons, and psychotropics, Olson's path naturally intersected with the intelligence agency's covert projects. Unlike the ruthless bureaucrats or detached operatives who populated parts of the intelligence apparatus, colleagues, and family members remember Olson as a deeply moral, gentle, and reflective man. By late 1953, Olson was growing increasingly troubled and morally conflicted by the horrific nature of the biological and chemical weapons he was helping to develop. Declassified records and family accounts indicate that he was contemplating resigning from Fort Detrick and stepping away from classified weapons research entirely. Tragically, it was this growing ethical crisis, combined with his insider knowledge of top-secret programs, that made his inadvertent dosing with LSD at Deep Creek Lake in November 1953, and his subsequent death at the Statler Hotel such a catastrophic turning point in intelligence history. In November 1953, Dr. Frank Olson, a brilliant, dedicated civilian, biochemist and bacteriologist working for the U.S. Army Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick, Maryland, attended a secluded, multi-agency retreat at a rustic lodge near Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. The gathering brought together top-tier researchers from the Biological Warfare Division and their CIA handlers, including Dr. Sidney Gottlieb and his deputy, Robert Lashbrook. On the final night of the retreat, Gottlieb secretly spiked a round of Cointreau brand triple sec with a massive undisclosed dose of synthetic LSD and served it to Olson and several other unsuspecting colleagues. Olson was given no warning, no choice, and no consent. Within hours, the compound took full effect, plunging a man known for his stable, analytical demeanor into a severe, terrifying psychological crisis. The drug unlocked an acute psychotic reaction characterized by paranoia, profound depression, and shattering derealization. Instead of rushing Dr. Frank Olson to a conventional medical facility, administering antidotes, or providing compassionate, objective psychiatric care, his CIA handlers made a chilling calculation. They recognized that if word leaked out that a top-tier federal biological weapons researcher had been covertly poisoned with an experimental mind-altering chemical by his own government, it would trigger a catastrophic congressional investigation and spell the absolute end of their clandestine black-budget operations. Realizing they had a psychological crisis on their hands, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb and his deputy, Robert Lashbrook, packed a profoundly paranoid and unstable Olson into a car and drove him away from the Maryland retreat. Instead of taking him to a hospital, they spirited him down to New York City, under the false pretense of finding him elite psychiatric help. In reality, they brought him straight to Dr. Harold Abramson, an allergist and pediatrician who was acting as a primary trusted contractor for Project MKUltra. Abramson was running unregulated LSD trials on psychiatric patients at Mount Sinai Hospital. However, Abramson offered zero legitimate medical intervention or stabilization. Instead, he simply fed Olson more alcohol and observed the devastating psychological fallout of an unmanaged bad trip. By Saturday, November 28, 1953, Olson was spiraling into a terrifying state of acute, crippling psychosis, characterized by delusions of persecution, profound depression, and an overwhelming desire to flee his handlers. Lashbrook checked them into room 1018 on the 10th floor of the Statler Hotel, later known as the Hotel Pennsylvania in Midtown Manhattan. Olson desperately wanted to break away, pack his bags, abandon his classified work at Fort Detrick, and return home safely to his wife Alice and their children in Maryland. Throughout the evening, Lashbrook placed phone calls back to CIA headquarters to report that Olson was losing his grip and threatening to blow the whistle on the agency's secret chemical and biological weapons programs. In the dead of night, at approximately 2:30 a.m. on November 28, 1953, the horrifying climax of the experiment unfolded. Olson crashed through the closed, wire-reinforced glass mesh window of room 1018, plunging 10 stories to his death onto the pavement of 33rd Street below. Robert Lashbrook claimed he woke up to the sound of crashing glass and rushed to the window just in time to see Olson fall, waiting a crucial amount of time to call the front desk or police. Decades later, when Olson's exhumed body was re-examined by independent forensic experts, they discovered severe premortem facial trauma and a fractured skull. Injuries entirely inconsistent with someone simply diving or jumping headfirst through a closed window, strongly indicating that Olson had been violently struck or thrown to silence a man who knew too much. Following the catastrophic events at the Statler Hotel, the CIA immediately swung its formidable institutional machinery and security apparatus into motion to construct an airtight wall of deniability, aggressively erasing any paper trail connecting Dr. Frank Olson's death to Project MKUltra. The agency delivered a carefully orchestrated, heartless falsehood to Olson's grief-stricken wife, Alice, and the broader public. They claimed that Frank had suffered a sudden, severe mental breakdown while working under intense professional stress at Fort Detrick, leading him to tragically leap from a hotel window in a paralyzing fit of work-related depression. The word LSD, the secret Deep Creek Lake retreat, and the presence of CIA handlers were entirely scrubbed from the official record. Furthermore, when CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the sweeping, systematic destruction of all MKUltra financial and operational files in 1973 to prevent congressional exposure, Olson's case files were among the primary targets slated for permanent erasure. The truth only began to claw its way into the light more than 2 decades later, in 1975. When unredacted documents unexpectedly surfaced during sweeping investigations by the Rockefeller Commission and the Church Committee. These congressional probes exposed the sprawling, illicit existence of MKUltra to an outraged American public. When the Olson family finally learned that Frank had not died from natural or job-related stress, but had instead been used as a drugged, unwitting guinea pig by his own government, President Gerald Ford formally apologized to the family in the Oval Office, and a financial settlement was reached. Unsatisfied with the government's sanitized narrative and suspecting foul play, the Olson family took the extraordinary step of forcing an exhumation of Frank Olson's body in 1994. A team of independent forensic experts, led by renowned forensic pathologist Dr. James Starrs, conducted a comprehensive autopsy. Their findings shattered the official suicide narrative. Starrs discovered severe premortem cranial trauma and distinct facial injuries that occurred before Olson hit the pavement, Injuries completely inconsistent with someone diving or jumping headfirst through a closed window. The forensic evidence strongly pointed to a much darker, sinister reality. Olson had been violently struck and thrown from the 10th-story window to silence, a man who was having second thoughts, threatening to resign, and ready to blow the whistle on the CIA's illegal chemical and biological warfare programs. Dr. Frank Olson's death remains the ultimate chilling symbol of the moral vacuum at the heart of Cold War intelligence, a stark, haunting reminder that when the state decides human consciousness is a weapon, the very people building the weapons are often the first ones sacrificed on the altar of national security. Knowing this dark reality of Cold War intelligence leaves one completely speechless. It is deeply unsettling to look at a world where an intelligence agency could treat innocent people, and even its own dedicated scientists, as disposable lab rats in the name of scientific or medical research. When you examine how the CIA actively sought out empowered individuals like Dr. Ewan Cameron or utilized top-tier researchers like Dr. Frank Olson, it forces you to question the warped psychology of both the operatives and the directors calling the shots. To play what they viewed as a high-stakes global chess game against the Soviet Union, the CIA deliberately went looking for brilliant, ambitious, and morally malleable minds willing to strip away human ethics to win. It is a chilling historical reminder of how easily absolute power and fear can corrupt science, turning the pursuit of knowledge into a weapon against the very people governments are sworn to protect. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archived Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Do you think the psychological trauma reported by ufology witnesses is evidence of otherworldly contact or the lingering shadow of Cold War mind control programs?